and then the cracks started to show. So basically, it became the most destructive, violent relationship you could possibly imagine. I won't go into details, but I was hospitalised on a regular basis. Broken nose, punctured lung, on a weekly basis. And I accepted it. I accepted that role as a victim. It was just who I was at that time, and the psychological abuse was a consistent thing. This went on for about just under 3 years. He isolated me so much that my parents couldn't have me in the house anymore because it caused so much trouble to my siblings, and so they said, you know, you either have to choose him or me. So basically, I chose him, being the stubborn teenager that I was. And one day I got this wake-up call. I refused to have sex with him because he'd been abusive to me all day, so I didn't really feel like having sex with him. And he did what every normal man does, and he strangled me to the point of me passing out. I awoke over the bed, and he was panicked over me, thinking that he'd killed me. And I'd just like to mention, he didn't try and call for help. He didn't try and call the emergency services. He didn't try and contact someone or even try and resuscitate me. He was just worried about how he was going to explain this to the police. So this was my wake-up call. My mother had told me for a long time that he was going to kill me, and if I didn't leave, that he wouldn't really care if he killed me. And this was my affirmation that he really, even if he did, wasn't going to give much of a shit. So I planned to leave him, which was tricky because, like I said, I lived with him. And at this point, I was 14, 15. He completely isolated me from everybody. So it took about a month to orchestrate a plan and leave him. And I remember distinctly driving away, and my parents driving me away, and thinking, I can't physically live without this man. He had made me so dependent on him that I genuinely had no idea who I was on my own. I had no identity whatsoever. And on top of that, to get away from him, I had to move to a strange city. Like I say, this time I was 15, nearly 16. No friends, no family. I had to start a job. I couldn't go into education because then he would find where I was. He sat outside my parents' house for 2 days straight, sat outside the house to see whether I would come back. So I had to move completely away, isolate myself to protect myself, and then start my journey on my own. So through this harrowing experience, I developed a lot of survival techniques that got me through the experience that I'm grateful for, but changed me who I was as a person. They ultimately rewired my brain to be negative and expect the worst from people. So whoever I met, I instantly was on the defense, because how were they going to hurt me? How were they going to attack me? Because this is all I'd ever known. And actually, I'm embarrassed to admit, but I became aggressive to protect myself because I didn't want to be that victim anymore. So as long as I was the aggressor, I would never be that victim, which was the worst case scenario. So the learned survival behaviour technique changed my core as a person. I developed an eating disorder, I had psychosis, I had depression, and I had severe body dysmorphia. I was about 6 stone, and I was ashamed of the way that I looked on a regular basis. And to cope with all that pain, this is something the first time I've ever admitted this, to cope with all that pain, I masked it with many addictions. Anything I could get my hand on, I would be addicted to, because it gave me escapism away from the pain. And that was all I wanted ultimately. You know, I was 16 years old. How do you deal with that pain? Like, how do you process it? And at 16, you're still a minor, so you're not entitled to the refuges and the support and that the adults are entitled to. And back then, you know, this was a long time ago, my parents weren't aware of what to do to help me. So basically, I went on a downward spiral for about 10 years. I hit the self-destruct button, or as a lot of my friends call it, the fuck it button. It's a good button, yeah, but only appropriate in certain circumstances. So I didn't value myself, I didn't value my life, and basically I didn't really want to live because I just thought I was a mistake. I thought, how could I justify what had happened to me at such a young age? Like, why, what have I done to deserve this, is all I kept saying to myself. So, like any downward spiral, there's a bottom, there's a rock bottom, and then there's where I ended up. So I was hospitalised and given 3 months to live, and the lifestyle that I was choosing was killing me. There's no surprises there. And this was when I had my awakening. So it was like a dream, but I was completely awake. And imagine if you stand on a tightrope, and you've got to the left-hand side of you was this dark, empty pit, black nothingness, and the fear of hopelessness and despair was unbelievable. And I was tilting towards this side, and the lack of control, and it was basically like my life was going to be over. How you imagine? I mean, I don't believe in afterlives, but it was like I was going to die, and there was going to be nothing but death and emptiness. And then to the right hand side of me was like light and life and people talking and love and what I could have. And for the first time in my life, I actually had a glimmer of hope that I could potentially change who I was. Like, actually, maybe I deserve to be happy. Maybe everything I've been told up until now isn't true. You know, there is an alternative life out there. So I felt a glimmer of hope, and I began what I like to call my recovery journey. So I started by seeing a wonderful therapist, and I saw her for 4 years, which is a long time to see a therapist. Now, I did change therapists twice because it's really important to find a therapist that you connect with and that relates to your experiences and that you can feel safe with, because ultimately you're sharing your deep, dark secrets, and you need to be with someone that you're on the same level with. So I saw her for 4 years without fail, even when I did nothing else, that when the paranoia was so bad that I couldn't leave the house, I couldn't even go to a pharmacy and sign my name on a prescription, I still maintained contact with her because I knew it was my lifeline. Also, I discovered a woman called Louise Hay. I don't know if any of you, there's some nods in the front here, I don't know if anyone else is familiar with her, but she ultimately changed my life. Listening to her audiobooks or reading her books on any platform, I highly recommend. So this was the turning point for me. It made me aware that the thoughts that I was thinking were attracting these experiences into my life. So the negative experience that I had kick-started this spiral and just this belief that I wasn't good enough and this is all I deserved. So I accepted that behaviour in my life. So I picked up many techniques along the journey, which I'll talk about in a minute, that helped my recovery and ultimately changed my life in a way that I literally could only dream of. So in a snapshot, these are the tools that I use to get me to where I am today. They're simple and easy, they can be applied into anybody's life, but the key is repetition. You have to believe that you deserve it and apply it in everyday life. Some of these might not sit with you personally, but I guarantee that if you take at least 3 of them away with you, then you will feel better about yourself and your life situation will improve. So, are we ready? Number 1, gratitude list. This is something that was actually taught to me by Katie. Oh, she's like, who? So, a gratitude list. So, at night, before you go to sleep, I started off with 3 because I struggled to start with, but if you are a positive person anyway, and you can think of more than 3, fantastic, that, you know, there's no limit to it. But I started with 3 things of that day that made you feel good about that day. It could be as simple as holding a door open for someone. It could be as simple as smiling at someone or smiling at a child and having something that makes you feel good. Write those down before you go to sleep. Then in the morning, when you wake up, look at that list again and read that list to yourself. So what you're doing is you're trying to reprogram your brain to look at the positive things that have happened that day. The way our brains are wired is naturally going to focus on negative things. There's nothing we can do about that, that's who we are as human beings. But what you want to do is retrain that brain process to look at the positives. And that for me, it sort of changed everything. The number 2 is mirror work. This was difficult for me with the body dysmorphia, but is the most powerful thing in the shortest amount of time. So to stand in front of a mirror, to look into your eyes and tell yourself that you love yourself. For me, the affirmation was, I love you and I accept you exactly as you are right here and right now. Now that is quoting Louise Hay, but that changed who I was. And ultimately, if you do that 2 or 3 times a day, you will feel better about who you are. We give ourselves a lot of negative self-talk when we walk past a mirror. You walk past a mirror and you think, oh God, my thighs look like this, or oh God, my hair looks like this, or everything we give ourselves through mirror work is negative. So what you're trying to do is give yourself that positive affirmation every time you pass a mirror. Admittedly, you're not going to do it every time to start with, but at least if you can do it just to yourself, look into your soul and tell yourself, like, I am worth this, I am enough, it will make you feel better, trust me. It can be a bit awkward at first, but you'll get used to it. Number 3, visualizations. I don't know if you're familiar with visualizations or like the work that Jim Carrey has done. So Jim Carrey wrote himself out a check. 12 years later, it came to fruition, and he got I think it was £1 million he got from The Mask. So it obviously takes quite a considerable amount of time. 12 years is a long time, but if you put that work in, so at night for me, I would lay in bed and I would have a vision. Paul McKenna does a hypnosis version of this on YouTube. You can just listen to it with like headphones. You literally lay there and you imagine your best version of yourself. So what you look like, what you smell like, how you feel, every little tiny detail. Then you step into that self, and the more you step into that self, the more you feel like you belong in that person and that you are ultimately that person. Number 4, positive affirmations. Now, again, I've mentioned Louise Hay, but get a book, get an audio book. Like for me, it was an audio book. I'd listen to it on the way to work, on the way home from work, on my walk, at lunchtime at work, anything to cement this positive affirmations, to try and flip the way that we see the world. So we focus on the negative. If you can see anything positive in any situation, it's ultimately going to make you feel better at the end of the day. And I know that there is a lot of it about now, but it does take time and it does take practice. But if you can do that, I guarantee you, it will become second nature. And to be able to think of things positively, including yourself, I mean, what a gift that would be. Like, it's amazing. So, number 5, I don't know if any of you have heard of Eckhart Tolle. He's a spiritual teacher, all the fronters on here. Yes, we have, yeah. So Eckhart Tolle is a very, very powerful spiritual teacher. He is absolutely phenomenal, someone I recommend. He changed the way I look at life. His spiritual practice is very in-depth, and I could talk about it for ages, but Katie will be like, get off. He talks about the power of the now. He talks about living in the now, and your ego will only focus on a problem. So it'll only focus on the past or the future. So it'll always give you something negative to think about. The power of the now is sitting with your thoughts and being the watcher of your thoughts. So the thought process that you have isn't your identity. You can control that as long as you're aware of what happens. It's about separating the two. So again, phenomenal. Number 6, counselling, obviously a huge advocate in that. If it's something that you've not looked into, the BACP website is fantastic. That's for the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapists. That is a website that gives you all accredited counsellors. It gives you their identity, so it shows you who they are as a person, what methodology they'll use, whether they do concession rates, whether they come to your house, anything. It gives me, because for me, I'd like to see who I'm seeing, to feel comfortable with, to get through that process. Fantastic, can't be an advocate. And they do concessions, because not many of us can afford £70 to £100 an hour. Number 7, angel cards. So I'm not religious in any way, shape or form. Angel has a connotation for me, but it gives me that guidance in that moment. So that dark moment where you've got no one else, all your friends and family have been supportive, they've said, everything's going to be okay, we love you, don't worry, but you've still got that hopelessness, empty feeling inside, and you don't understand why what's happening to you is happening to you. It gives you that guidance. It just gives you that support, and whether it's true or not, who cares if it makes you feel better? Yes. You're not doing anyone any harm. Number 8, time for yourself. Now this is really important. We all think we make time for ourselves. We all think, oh, we've given ourselves sort of 5 minutes and whatnot. And for me, hair, I like to have my hair done. I like to have my nails done. I like to have something that makes me feel good as a person. And something that I've been doing recently might seem a little bit self-indulgent, but I've given my body a lot of negative self-talk over the years. I've told myself that I'm fat, that I'm worthless, I'm not good enough, I hate myself, I'm not even good enough to be out in public. You know, we've all had those moments where we really don't love who we are. Our body shows up for us every day, no matter what we put it through. And a massage for me is a way of giving ourselves back love to a body that supports us on a regular basis and is there for whatever we put it through, like constant negative self-talk. But that's just something for me. But find something that resonates with you, that makes you feel happy, like something that will genuinely make you feel better, because ultimately the happiness is the aim of the game, isn't it? That's what we want. So listen to yourself and respond in a way that's loving. When you become more aware of that self-talk, to cater that towards what you want and what you need, that for me has been a game changer. And it is like listening to the massages, listening to the things that that will really respond in your way. But it's about finding what you want. So write a list of what makes you happy. Do the things that is going to light you up. If you like flowers, for example, buy some flowers. I don't like buying flowers for myself. I think someone else should buy them for me. But actually, if you like flowers, buy flowers. Have them in your house. Like who cares? And number 10, finally, Music.